And this watch actually, in my opinion, is one of the watches that actually resurrected the great house of Breguet once Roth had taken it over with Genta.
Even though it wasn't a commercial success, you've said many times that it was very high quality. So
amazingly high quality. So let's look at a couple.
Let's look at a couple of
Sure.
them, and maybe you can show me the quality.
I think let's start with this because it was from the very first era of Roth. So pre-1990.
From pre-1990.
Pre-1990. So this here is the retrograde. So this was modeled after the George Daniels Edward Hornby piece, right? So Edward Hornby was a pocket watch made for Edward Hornby. And if you actually looked at this watch right next to it, you'll see the quality is, I mean, first of all, you can see the inspiration really clearly. They were made in two variants, Roman and Arabic. Romans are the very earliest and the most rare and the most coveted because the original Edward Hornby pocket watch was also a Roman number dial. They were mostly closed back. So what you're looking at there is the very, very rare example of an open back, which was special order only. That's a Lemania caliber. Look at the way it's finished. Yeah. Look at the way the number of the watch is actually on the movement. I mean, this is how Roth was. Just hugely focused on the smallest details. You know, if you hold the watch slightly to like this, you can actually see it's almost three-dimensional.
Yeah.
This is a very common trait of the first generation Roths. And again, you know, a handful of pieces exist, and this is probably one of the best known examples. I think shortly after that, Roth became very famous for his bicompax chronograph, which is using the same Lemania caliber as the Patek variant of that chronograph.
So you have one of this over here, right?
Well, this is the best example because this is a skeleton Roth, hand finished, first generation, probably one of the rarest pieces he made. Some people who know him closely have told me that there's less than 5. I don't know if that number is accurate. Each one of these was made completely by hand. And you can see it's in a single metal, yellow gold, as most of Roths were. Look at the quality of that movement.
Each of these are hand engraved, which means that technically they're unique because the engraving is never going to be exactly the same.
Every single skeleton Roth from the original Renaissance period made by him is a unique piece. Just because, you know, the details, the minutiae of actually engraving them using that burin, it requires time and effort, you know, and this was a man who did it himself. So he literally sat there with all these old tools, not unlike what a George Daniels would have used, you know, for him to sit down and actually hand engrave every single component. In those days, without any technological advancement, without any technology, is amazing. Another two I'll show you. This is the very first perpetual made by Daniel Roth. So there's a couple of peculiarities. The model is the 3050, but just in this variant, there are only 2 examples that I have seen. So what's different about this 3050 is that it's the very earliest ones. You can see a couple of minor things. One is there's no cabochon at all, which is what most of them will have. And the second is it's Italian dial. So when these were launched, just when Roth took over Breguet, this was the first production. It took 22 months to make one piece, and Europe was going through a crisis. The only money was in Italy. So just like the Royal Oak, when it was first introduced, Genta mentioned to Roth that why don't you make an Italian version and release it to in Italy? And it was a resounding success. And this watch actually, in my opinion, is one of the watches that actually resurrected the great house of Breguet once Roth had taken it over with Genta. This is designed by Gerald Genta, and it's built by Daniel Roth. So you've got 2 of the greatest minds.
Branded under Breguet.
Branded under Breguet.
Oh, congratulations, very nice piece.
Yeah, and I think one more, because we've talked so much about old Roth. We should probably talk about newer Roth, or like not too old, but I think second generation. So this is my very first Daniel Roth.
Okay. Which period is this one from?
So this is the neoclassic So the middle.
The 94 to 99.
That's it.
Okay.
So this is 95. Salmon dial. Zenith. So they, again, you can see that was Lemania.
Yeah.
But for this one, they actually went to Zenith with a slightly cheaper movement.
Yeah.
Still beautiful movement,
Yeah.
right? You could see the movement from the back, but it's obviously not the same level or not the same
You
price.
see a lot of the common design elements, like obviously the elliptical curvature
Yeah.
shape, the Roman numerals, the gear shade, different finishings on the different sections of the dial. So still very much a Daniel Roth.
Absolutely. So he was very much involved, but not as much. So obviously he had to listen to the Hourglass company, which had bought his brand. They started making them in steel.
Yeah.
The early Roths were mostly precious metal. In fact, they only made 10 pieces in steel of some of the early versions. That's how rare they were. So that's an very interesting piece as well in terms of Roth.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing. Obviously, we've gone through some of your favorite pieces. We've talked about the heritage of Roth. I'm also quite interested in what you think about in the future for Roth. Obviously now with the LVMH and the direction they're going to take.
So let's start with the good bits first, right? I think they're doing the brand justice. So they released one 20-piece subscription version of the tourbillon with a salmon dial. Beautiful piece. They had a modern font. Us Roth collectors are a little bit of a crazy breed. We revolted. Literally there was hunger strikes outside the... No, I'm kidding, but close, right? And honestly, kudos to them for listening to the community, for immediately reversing and move it back to a traditional font. So I think as an ethos, they're true to the purity and the essence of Daniel Roth, which is great. The negative is what's taking them so long. This tourbillon was launched, I think almost a year now. I've heard nothing from their stables, and I know the Genta lovers amongst your subscribers are also wondering what's wrong with them on the Genta front.
Yeah.
I have heard that they're going to be coming out with some things March of next year. I can only hope that they will re-release the next version of Roth. I think they're doing a good job. They're going sequence by sequence. So they're starting with the first that he made, which is the tourbillon, and they're moving on to the pieces in order, which is the right way to do it. They're pricing them really well as well. There were 20 pieces, it sold in 6 minutes from what I heard. So I think they're doing the right thing, but they're just doing it too slowly.
Right.
So they should be bringing out the second
Bam,
and the
bam,
third.
bam,
Exactly.
quicker,
You can't, the waiting is okay, we get it, but don't pull a Rolex on us and have us wait for 20 years for a piece.
Fair enough. All right, so besides from collecting Roths, what are the other interesting brands you feel that are quite collectible and maybe a bit underappreciated right now?
So look, there's a lot of value out there if you're looking. And again, going by the same theme of rarity over everything else, quality and rarity over everything else. So, demand, supply at the end of it. I think Roger Dubuis is something absolutely worth looking at. Vintage or early Roger Dubuis, especially watches like the Sympathy or the Homage. I think Vintage Breguet is definitely something to continue to look at. Parmigiani, early Parmigiani, the quality is superb. I mean, it's similar to what Roth was doing in its early times. So I think Parmigiani is one to watch as well. So those are the ones I would focus on.
Vintage Breguet, Vintage Parmigiani, Vintage Roger Dubuis.
Absolutely. Oh, also Vintage Frank Muller. Not the tonneau-shaped stuff that we are so used to, but some of the round
cases,
chronographs, the double dials especially, those are fantastic. I mean, you look at the latest Recepi, which they've done with LVMH. It's a double dial.
Yeah.
So, and again, these are beautiful watches and very hard to find, very rare. I've got a couple in the collection stashed away as well.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your insight. I feel like I've definitely learned a lot. I'm not sure I'm ready to buy a Roth yet, but if I do...
Damn, I was going to sell you one.
One day I'm ready to jump into that. I know where to find you.
Absolutely.
Right,
absolutely. They all come to me.
Yes.
They all come to me at some point.
And make sure you check Gaurav's page out. He's high-end.
I've got 5 pictures on Instagram. I mean, as Jonathan knows and as Carlos and Helbert know as well, I am photographically challenged. So check my 5-photo Instagram page out.
Yeah, reach out to Gaurav if you have any questions about Roth, and I'm sure if you have any advice on neo-vintage watches, or if you just want a general chat, with a nice guy, then hit him up.
And just I want to add, honestly, huge thank you to THC. It's, you guys are really inspirational for me. And honestly, the word watch fam is defined by what you've created. I think you guys have done a fantastic job. So, I look forward to many events and contributing in any way I can to the community. This is a very special community to me.
Thank you.
So, yeah.